All right, ladies and gentlemen, Josh here from Momentum Productions back with another live stream. We have the DJI Ronin-S right here. I have the June Crane 2 on the side for comparison purposes. I took it on my first professional shoot already. I have some things to say about it. I wanted to answer some questions live for you guys right here, right now. And then tomorrow I'm releasing my first impressions video, my official first impressions video about the DJI Ronin-S. And there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say, but I'm going to save a lot of the good stuff also for the comparison video with the Crane 2. I'm not releasing a review tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be more like what was my real world experience with the Ronin-S and overall how well did it perform. It's not a comparison to the Crane 2 yet. That's going to be something that I'm going to have to go a lot more in depth with, but I went on one date with the Ronin-S and I just want to share my experiences with this gimbal. So we're going to do that in just a moment. Let me answer some quick questions before we get started. Mr. Yarn K, what up? Josh Haynes, favorite thing about the Ronin-S over the Crane 2? Favorite thing about the Ronin-S over the Crane 2? Probably the grip, I would say. The grip I am a really big fan of. I love how ergonomic and comfortable the grip is on the Ronin 2. I would say that's probably one of my favorite things about the Ronin-S. Daniel Schiffer, I just got my Ronin-S. I've noticed that with my A7 III, I can switch to inverted mode. How would I? How I would on the Crane 2. Yeah, honestly, dude, with my Ronin-S, like, it shakes, dude, when I try to go into inverted mode. You hear that? Oh, you can't go into inverted mode. Yeah, it's a little funky, man. Like, people say you have to go into inverted mode like this, but this is not a good way of going into inverted mode because of this freaking motor. So I try to go like the Crane 2. I try to go into inverted mode like the Crane 2, but it's just not taking it. Just not taking it right now. So they definitely got to work that out. The motor gets in the way for me. Yeah, exactly, dude. And if you try to go into inverted mode like the Crane 2, stuff starts to shake, man. Like what is that? Like, if you do it quick, I guess it doesn't do it, but then the camera tilts down, which is weird. So, I mean, that's kind of a problem. But Daniel Schiffer, what up, bro? What up, my Canadian homie? How you doing? Hey, how heavy is it? I don't know the actual weight, but it's heavy. It ain't light. It ain't light. I mean, we got... This is my, like, before I got my Ronin-S and all that, this was the gimbal I was using every single shoot. Every single shoot. I actually released some footage of my shoot that I did, a workout shoot I did with the Ronin-S. So if you want to check out my IG, my first impressions video coming out tomorrow will have a lot of that footage in there. So you can see a lot of sample footage from the Ronin-S coming out tomorrow, my first impressions video. Alex Grant says, it's only 1 pound heavier than the Crane. Okay, great. It feels heavier than 1 pound. I'll tell you that right now. 1 pound doesn't sound too bad, but it actually does make a pretty big difference. Devin Victor says, is there any news of a dual handle for the Ronin-S? There's no official release from DJI, but they said that they're going to be releasing a ton of accessories for it. So I'm assuming, yes, there will be. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, guys, so one thing people were talking about was the sport mode on the Ronin-S. And here we go. Here's our sport mode. The only issue is that if you keep panning like this, the Ronin slowly starts to get very unstable. So if you keep panning like this, there we go. It starts losing that pan. I don't know why it does that, but it just becomes a little bit unstable and then unresponsive. So if you're going to have a sport mode on a gimbal, you got to make sure that it works, guys. It works for maybe 5 or 6 pans, but after that, it starts to lose control. Random, but why don't you post any more GlideCam videos, though? I miss them. I feel like I've done everything with GlideCam. I feel like I've done every single video possible with GlideCam. If you think of any other idea or tutorial you want me to shoot with a GlideCam, let me know. I'd be more than happy to. I actually have to do an official comparison between a manual stabilizer and a gimbal, so maybe I'll do a video like that. Devin Victor says, Juin rocks. I agree. I love what Juin is doing. To be honest, I feel like DJI did a good job with the Ronin-S, but they're a little bit behind. They're a little bit behind regarding functionality with the actual gimbal itself. Like, if you're going to provide the sport mode, make sure that it works. Some of the design issues, like the charging port being away from the battery, I thought that was a pretty weird decision. That means that you can't charge the battery of the gimbal unless you hook it up to the gimbal. With the Crane 2, I can just take out my batteries and charge them separately, and then put in a new fresh set of batteries while those are charging. With the Ronin-S, you can't do that. You have to charge everything together. And I think that's one major design flaw. One very, very big design flaw, and it can cost people a lot of money. Another thing I'm not a big fan of with the Ronin-S is the fact that it has basically 2 power buttons. There is one battery power button that you have to turn on. Once that's turned on, you have to go to a secondary power button and press that as well. So you're actually losing time by powering your gimbal. There's not one button that you can just straight up press. I think that's another weird little gimmick there that I'm not a big fan of. There might be a reason behind that down the road. I don't know. But as a standalone gimbal right now, not a fan. VFX Todd, welcome back. I'm not talking about preferences. I'm talking about a flaw. That's definitely a design flaw, my friend. I know you have the Ronin-S and I know you love it, but as a videographer, as a filmmaker, you got to be quick, and it's not quick. Okay. Devin Victor says DJI is planning to sell more accessories to us. The price may get higher than the other gimbals. Probably. For the sport mode, you should hold the M button, not the trigger, isn't it? No. So you hold the M button until the mode LEDs turn amber. So you hold the mode button here. See how it changes to amber? Now you're in sport mode. So he does those quick whip pans now. So that's how you go into sport mode. Okay. What would you recommend a gimbal for mirrorless camera? Easy to carry and at the same time good for vlogging. Man, any alpha camera I'm a big fan of because so far those cameras have the best focus, autofocus. So I would stick to let's say an alpha camera, maybe like an A7 III, since it has a similar focusing system to the A9. A lot of autofocus points, so if you do a lot of movements around, the sensor is split up into individual focus points. So you should stay in focus if you're vlogging. Okay, next question. Hello, brother from India. I'm using the Crane 2. Did you suggest me to buy Juin monopod? Listen, the Juin monopod is good, but I think you should invest in something. If you plan on using it for like jib moves or crane moves, invest in something a little bit stronger. The monopod is mainly used for just a simple monopod. I wouldn't recommend using it for like those boom shots, simply because there's a lot of stress on the monopod. So invest something that's maybe $300 or $400, maybe something with carbon fiber and with a heavier payload, because the monopod does bend if you hold it up like this for any of those crane or jib movements. So remember that. It's a good monopod, good quality, just not for the payload. So it's just a good standalone monopod and just to be used as a monopod. Jake Guerin says, so question, would you choose one over the other? You know what? I would, but I'm not going to tell you which one yet. I need to release my comparison video But tomorrow will give you kind of a better impression of what's going on with the Ronin-S, because I did use it on my most recent workout shoot with 2 bodybuilders. I leaked some footage of that on my IG. I'm going to release a lot more footage tomorrow, my first impressions video, so make sure you watch that as well. VFX Todd says, I disagree. All right, VFX Todd, let's get into a little battle, dude. Let's get into a little battle. Number 1 design flaw. Why would you put the charging port away from the battery? I want you to answer that question for me, VFX Todd. That's definitely not a preference. That's a little bit of a flaw. So by putting the charging port away from the battery, you have to have the battery connected to the gimbal in order to charge it. What happens if I want to buy another battery and use the gimbal while this one is charging? You can't do that. So please, VFX Todd, tell me, how would you do that? How would you do that? Let me know in the comments. Next question. Best gimbal for GoPro. I don't know, man. I don't own a GoPro. I own this little action camera, but honestly, whenever I use a gimbal, I put like an SLR camera on it, so I wouldn't be able to answer that for you. Just do some research. I reviewed I reviewed quite a few gimbals, but not anything to do with GoPro. So Alexandra Chiochia, you said that you just ended your first pro shoot with the Ronin-S. What was that about? That was a fitness shoot. That was a fitness shoot. Pride Media says, is a Sony a6000 and June Crane V2 still a good setup? Yes, it's still a very good setup. I mean, the V2, even though it's older than all the other June models so far that are out and are pretty hot right now, it can definitely support the a6000. Alexandru Chochia, what kind of shots have you done with the Ronin-S, and how did it serve the purpose? What did you lack with the Ronin-S? Okay, so that's a very good question. I'm mainly going to cover that in my first impressions video. Overall, I do have to say that the Ronin-S did a great job. There were a few quirks, like when I tried to do very wide orbit shots, the pans weren't that consistent. It liked to jerk a little bit. Maybe I have to go into the settings and change that up, but when I'm doing these reviews, I judge the gimbal based off of the factory settings, because factory settings are supposed to be the best settings for the gimbal. That's what they've been testing all of their features on. So I test gimbals based on their default factory settings. And when I was trying to do those wide orbit shots, I was walking fast around a pulley machine. It did like to jerk a little bit. Not that noticeable unless I point it out. So that's just something to consider. I haven't put a telephoto lens on it yet. That will be for the comparison video with the Crane 2. It was stable. I could not go into inverted mode in one swoop. There were some issues with that, so I did not go into inverted mode during that shoot. It didn't work out for me. It was glitching out a little bit too much. So hopefully they will fix that. Yeah, inverted mode is actually a pretty big deal, and I wasn't able to do that on my shoot. It would have taken too much time to fix and readjust the camera, because as I mentioned earlier, going into inverted mode with the Ronin-S, it should not be like this. This is not a good way to go into inverted mode, guys. Not a good way at all, because this motor will eventually get into the way of the lens. Inverted mode should be like this. You should be able to go into inverted mode just like any other gimbal, and that is like that. And what happens when I do that? The camera just wants to tilt down. So, I mean, and then it likes to shake in the process. So that's just something that I'm not a fan of. And because of that, I was not able to really shoot in inverted mode and then quickly go to upright mode during my shoot. So that's just something I couldn't do. Yeah. All right. Sven Johansson, new sub. Thank you so much. What were the strongest points of the Ronin-S during your shots? Literally the subtle pans. It handled subtle pans very well. Whenever I wanted to do quick close-ups of a shoulder muscle working, I did very soft, subtle pans, and the Ronin-S behaved very well. Actually, very similar to out of a slider. So it did very consistent, slow pans. As soon as I started doing quick movements with it, I did start feeling a little bit of jerkiness, a little bit of, it was just not stable with quick movements. But with those soft, subtle pans, I mean, that's literally me taking the gimbal, going up for a close-up. Let me just reset it really quick. And just going like this. It did a very good job. So DJI's smooth track kicks in, and I think it does a pretty good job with those soft, subtle pans. So I was really happy about that. I was impressed. It also does a good job with roll follow. So for example, yeah, there we go. You can actually do roll follow like you can with the Crane 2. It did a good job. One issue I had with that is if you go too far, sometimes the gimbal might want to reset like that. So it can be a little bit of a jerk. Okay, it can be a little bit of a jerk. So keep that in mind. That is important. All right. So give me 1 second here. Okay. All right. So Sam Carroll says you were pretty much pigeonholed into DJI brand batteries, which means you can charge a lot for one and you have to buy them. Yes. So that's a really good point. DJI has proprietary batteries, so you have to be only using DJI batteries. Yeah. Mr. Yaring says, I don't know why you skipped my question, but I'll ask it again. What do you think about the last 4-axis dual handle for the Joon Crane gimbals? Are you going to test it out? I already answered this question in my last live stream. I don't think I'm going to test out those Z-axis gimbals. It's just, it feels too clunky. I mean, I might. If two companies already reached out wanting me to test it out, but I'm like a little hesitant because it's not ideal for me. If you guys really want me to test one out, sure, I'll do it, but it's just not an ideal setup for those of you who want run and gun setups. So yeah. Sanjay, Josh, hi. My please Ronin battery life. Battery life, so far it's been good. I think it holds up to the 12 hours. I think the battery life has been pretty consistent to what DJI was reporting it at. So yeah, I would say 12 hours is pretty accurate. The issue with the inverted mode in the Ronin-S is that you cannot lift the camera towards the motor if you keep the handle pointed downward. Yes, you can. So the motor eventually will let's go through that process actually, so I can show you how that works. So here's the Ronin app. Hopefully you guys can kind of see it. What we're going to do, we're going to go to connect to Ronin. That's this button here. Connect that up. We're going to go to calibration. Sorry. So we have a motor parameters and then auto tune. Press auto tune. It's going to make these little like noises. I don't know if you can hear it. Yeah, so those little like white noises, that's the gimbal being tested out. So that's auto tune. Instead of me having to manually adjust the parameters of the motors, it uses, I guess it's a form of AI to test them out to make sure that the settings are good. All right. So that's that. Alexandru says, have you used the auto-tune? Yeah, I already answered that. Have you used the Ronin-S on a monopod as a jib? I have not. And I'm not sure I want to because I don't have a strong enough monopod to support the Ronin-S and a camera and a cage on there. So it's going to get pretty heavy, might bend the monopod, and I might be in trouble. Yeah, guys. So that was my overall experience with Ronin-S. Positive but quirky, if that makes sense. Positive but quirky. Yeah, I have a few more dates to take the Ronin-S on, a few more shoots. But so far, I think it made a pretty solid first impression of what I would expect, like down the road with the Ronin-S. I feel like I got a pretty good, clear view of what it's capable of because these fitness shoots, they're very demanding. They require you to capture a lot of dynamic shots ranging from orbits, close-ups, high angle to low angle, mid-range shots. Like workouts are very demanding because you're supposed to capture as many angles as possible. So that's important. I feel like I got a pretty good, clear view of what this gimbal is capable of. Is there any way to control motor power in the Crane Plus? Yes, of course there is. I did a video on it. You have to check out my channel. Alexander says, do you think that your Ronin-S experience will get better as you work with it longer time and you get the feeling of it? I already have the feeling of it. I already know what it can do. I know how it reacts. My experience with it hasn't been negative. It's been positive. It's just certain things are not there where they need to be, and that is inverted mode. That's the biggest issue I'm having with the Ronin-S right now is inverted mode. And the whip pans are great, the sport mode, but what happens is that if you do it over a few times, like I mentioned this earlier in the live stream, like right now, I can do whip pans, but after about 4 or 5 whip pans, it starts to become very unstable. As you can see, it starts wobbling like crazy. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, it just starts to give out. So what that tells me is that it's probably not enough power going to the motors. So they probably gotta change that up. Alexandria says, I guess not all gimbals are made equal. They're definitely not. They're definitely not. I mean, the concepts are the same for the most part, but they behave completely differently. The Ronin-S actually has been, I mean, the Crane 2 was my option of using a gimbal. Okay, that was my #1 option for shoots. And out of the 8 gimbals that I've tried, I've compared them to the Crane 2, and the Ronin-S has been the closest gimbal to the Crane 2. No other gimbal has come close to the Crane 2. I think this gimbal does come close. But, you know, my comparison video will reveal what specific issues I'm having with the Ronin-S, what I love about the Ronin-S, and comparing it with the Crane 2. Regarding weight, I mean, the shoot that I was on was a few hours, and after about 20, 25 minutes, my back did start to hurt. Because with my low angle, not low angle shots, but like mid range shots, when I go in for close ups, I do arch my back a little bit just so I'm a little more stable. And with the weight of the Ronin-S, it did hurt my back a little bit. Yeah. VFX Todd went away. He was talking a little smack and then he went away. He loves his Ronin-S really, like he's really attached to it. And I understand, but as soon as I brought up that little charging thing, he disappeared. Come back, dude. Where'd you go? Can you use follow focus devices with the Ronin-S? Rumor says yes, you can, but nothing has been released from DJI yet. Hello, Josh. What's up, Gregor? How you doing? Alexander Chochia says, how you get rid of the issues of the sport mode when it appears? You don't get rid of the issues. I mean, there's no fix for it yet. So you just have to live with it. To be honest with me, I'm not going to be using sport mode too much. So for me, it doesn't bother me too much, but it's there. It's an issue. A lot of vloggers love to do quick whip pans, and I'm sure this gimbal is also going to be used for vlogging, and they might find it very irritating. But as for me, I'm not a vlogger, at least not yet, and I'm not going to be using the Ronin-S for vlogs. So the whip pans aren't that big of a deal breaker, but it's an issue, and it's there. Martin Adams says, I start my training with Crane 2. Can you make some video and tips? First walk, maybe 5-step for beginners with the gimbal. Yeah, so I have a ton of tutorials on the Crane 2 already. I'm releasing more during the next couple weeks. And this is not only for the Crane 2, this is for a whole bunch of other gimbals as well. So if you do have the Ronin-S and not the Crane 2, this will still benefit you. It's all about the technique. It's not always all about the gimbal, so keep that in mind. Is the Crane 2 better than the Ronin-S, according to you? I can't answer that yet. I do need more time with the gimbals. I will answer this on my comparison video, and I will provide factual evidence and not just a straight-up opinion. I don't want to be biased with these comparison videos. If you saw my Feiyutech A2000 versus Crane Plus video, you'll see that I'm not biased. I do prove all of my opinions based on factual evidence. So you'll just have to wait and see. I want to build a little bit of hype for that comparison video because a lot will go into it. Tomorrow you're going to see my first impressions of the Ronin-S. You're going to see some of the test footage that I got from my shoot. You're going to see behind the scenes of how I held the gimbal and what kind of motions I was doing with it. So it's not just going to be just the footage. You're actually going to see me work with the gimbal as well. So I was able to get some BTS of that. So I'm happy. And you'll see exactly how I work during these shoots, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think that it's a solid gimbal. It's a solid gimbal. Definitely some quirks there that needs improving. But yeah, my first impressions will actually get you a better idea of what I think needs work on with the Ronin-S and things that I like about the Ronin-S too. Do you see any real professional use for the creative modes? What creative modes are you referring to? Anerban says, is there a way which we can change the Crane 2's joystick to a different designed one? Right now, no. Not that I'm aware of. Paul Boys Diesel says, just a wild question. Have you ever tried one of those DIY gimbals? If so, what was your thoughts? I have not tried any DIY gimbals. Do you have one specifically in mind? Maybe I can try it. Martin Adam, 4-axis for gimbals equals do you try? I have not tried 4-axis attachments. I might do a review on it, but guys, I would not waste your money on 4-axis attachments right now. You can easily get just as good footage, if not better, if you use the right technique. You do not need 4-axis dual handles, okay? A lot of companies don't like me saying that, but it's the truth. You don't need to be investing money on spring-loaded dual handle systems. You really don't. They're expensive, they're clunky, and for the most part, they don't do their job. I feel like a lot of them are gimmicks, so I wouldn't be spending your hard-earned money on that. Try to get better at shooting with your technique. Yeah, guys. Any more questions? This is a good live stream. Oh, another thing I noticed, guys, and I posted about this on my YouTube community page, and that is the Ronin-S has motor noise. So for those of you who do like to vlog and you put a camera and you put a microphone directly on your camera, or you use your camera's microphone, you're going to hear some motor noise out of that bad boy. Oh yeah, you're going to hear some motor noise. That's another big issue. Crane 2 is dead silent. I don't hear any motor noise. Unless I do crazy like whip pans with the Crane 2, I don't hear the motors working. But with the Ronin-S, you do hear like you know, that typical motor noise that you would hear. Can you make a video on how to do a parallax video with the Crane 2? I need more specifics. What do you mean by parallax video? Sam Carroll says, good budget external. And I can recommend some monitors for you. The Hawaii Entrepreneur, what is your minimum for you to go out and actually do a job? What is my minimum, like my rate? I mean, it depends on the job. It depends on I would never do a job for $200 or less unless it was for like a friend or family member. I probably wouldn't even charge them for that. But $200 or less for using pro level equipment, that's very low. And it also depends on how many hours. I mean, it also depends on the quality of the work that you produce. But I'm assuming that if you have the money to spend on, you know, high-end equipment, I would think that your footage is coming out good because you're making money. So I could be wrong. But yeah, if you're just getting into this and you have some money in your bank account, I would first do a lot of free shoots and rather than paid shoots at any rate. That way people won't have too much of an expectation. So if you do end up screwing up a shoot, they won't be that mad. They would be a lot more mad if they paid for it, but a lot less mad if they didn't pay for it. So I would get some footage with free shoots first, and then once you start getting really nice footage that you're getting out of free gigs, that's when you start building up your reel, and that's when you start charging the big bucks. I'm actually going to be releasing a very important video surrounding contracts and client work coming very soon. It's the business side of being your run-and-gun filmmaker. It's very important because it's an issue I constantly run into every now and then, and it's a lot of issues that I get emailed about. It has to do with money, and it has to do with contracts, and it has to do with clients. It's something that's a very sensitive subject, and it's one of those subjects that's going to actually make you mad, and it's actually going to make you feel glad that you watched the video because it's something that's currently happening to a lot of filmmakers. So we're going to be talking about that. Does the Ronin-S have object tracking like the Crane 2? No, not that I've seen. It does not have object tracking like the Crane 2. I hear people only go to jobs no less than 1K. It depends on the job. You need specifics, but sure. I recently locked in a contract for $500 for an audio podcast. Congratulations, bro. Po Boys Diesel said that's the number for the DIY. $200 or less for the budget. Okay, I'll check it out on eBay. Thank you. Any more questions, guys? Good live stream. Let's keep it going. Don't be shy. Any more questions, guys? Any more at all? Yeah. Do you prefer Sony or Canon for video shooting? So I was an original Canon shooter, and I moved to Sony. And for video, Canon definitely doesn't meet up to Sony. I feel like I love the color science of Canon more than Sony, I'll be honest. Fuji has the best color science that I've ever used or tried, Fujifilm. In my opinion, again, this is all subjective what I'm stating, but this is just what I think. Sony's colors are not where they need to be. Quality, fabulous. Colors, not really there. I noticed with Sony cameras, the highlights are usually, a lot of the time, they're really blown out. Really blown out. Shadows look good, but highlights are usually very just mushy and blown out. Canon, what Canon did with the 5D Mark II, it was fantastic, but it was very high contrast. The shadows were very rich on the 5D Mark II. I noticed that a lot. And overall, I think it just provided a better color than what the Sonys do today. But again, Sony can change this with different picture profiles and all that other stuff, and actually changing some of it could be hardware design changes too. But for video, I do recommend Sony more, not because of the color science, but because of the actual functionality of video for their Sony Alpha cameras. It's better than Canon. That's the only reason why I switched. I switched for the features and not necessarily for the color science, because I did the math, and the features for me outweighed the color science. Can you go into flashlight mode with the Crane 2 below horizontal? Yes, of course. Do you make any short films? No, I don't. Well, when you take a job, you usually go with your own equipment, or you rather rent. It depends on the job. I mean, it's for me, I usually take my own equipment. For me, I usually take my own equipment. I rarely rent. I rarely rent. Okay. Did you ever use a small HD 701 light? I have not. Did you use the GH5S with the Ronin-S? No. I had the GH4, but I sold it before I got the Ronin-S. What about Panasonic GH5, GH5S versus Sony and Canon? Listen, GH5 is going to produce you with, it's going to produce the most in-depth picture. It's going to produce the cleanest picture. It's going to produce the most dynamic picture because of that high bit rate. But when it comes down to focus, it's crap. When it comes down to low light, it's crap. That's where Sony takes over. Canon can't compete with Sony with low light either. So low light definitely goes to Sony. Color and image quality, I would say, goes to Panasonic, because that bit rate, I mean, they were able to do a lot more with the bit rate and the overall hardware because of that smaller sensor size. But with the new A7S III coming out, I think Sony's going to surprise us with something with a full frame sensor. So we'll see what happens. Do you have a favorite LUT to use for color grading? Can you say the name? I really like using Film Convert. It's a plugin for Final Cut and Premiere. It does a really good job of emulating real film, and it has a bunch of LUTs built in, and they're adjustable LUTs as they should be, so you can actually have a lot of fun with Film Convert. Enerban says parallax, keeping the object in the middle and move around it. That's more like orbit. I think you're talking about an orbit, and I've done small videos on it, but I'm going to dive more in depth with more tutorials on that. Alexander says, thanks a lot for your answers. Thank you for asking them, my friend. Thank you. Thank you. Did I miss any questions here? Sam Carroll, if you're still watching, I completely spaced on your question. So $200 for or less for a budget monitor. I would say maybe the Feel World monitors. Geontech makes its own monitor, but I believe it's over $200, so it doesn't fit into your budget. So go into the Feel World monitors. They're decent. They're not the best, but when it comes down to checking focus and framing, I think they're pretty good monitors for that. They're nice and sharp. Do you use your GlideCam a lot? Honestly, I haven't touched it in months, to be honest. What is your overall goal as a videographer? I'm focusing on my YouTube channel right now. I'm focusing on my YouTube channel. I want to build the YouTube channel and keep making tutorials for you guys. What tips could you give to a person starting wedding cinematography? Just the main ones will do. Have a solid contract. Have a solid contract and make sure you have very good communication skills with your client. I don't do weddings, but the overall communication with clients is the same as any other type of job. So make sure your client knows what's up. Make sure that you're well protected in your contract. I will be making a video on that. So yeah, I would say two big things: good communication with your client. Second thing, have a contract that protects you. Okay, 50% deposit, not 20, not 25, but 50%. None of this 10% BS. Half now, half later type deal for all of these types of contracting jobs. Yeah, that's how you, for one, know that the client is well committed and won't bail on you. And even if they do bail, you get to keep the deposit. It's a non-refundable deposit unless you cancel. So make sure you get that 50% locked into the contract. Preferred that they pay you in cash. Unless you've worked with a client before, they can pay you in check. Don't use Venmo for money transfers. Use PayPal. Make sure you add a 3% fee to your overall amount. That way the PayPal charges are covered. So if a job was $500, add another $15 as a 3% fee for PayPal. Okay? So those are just some of the main tips, not all of them. I'm going to cover that in a video, but those are just some things that for you to work off of. Why not Venmo, Josh? Very good question. I'm going to tell you right now. So Venmo is, if you read their privacy statement and their terms and conditions, Venmo specifically for friends and family, if it has anything to do with business, Venmo will freeze the funds. A lot of people have been scammed selling their equipment on Craigslist and using Venmo, because Venmo will freeze the assets if they find out that you've done any business using Venmo. So never use Venmo with business. It states in their terms and conditions that if they find out that it's a business transaction and not a family or friend kind of transaction, they're going to freeze the funds. So people sold stuff on Craigslist. They sold their film equipment. The guy paid them in Venmo. Then the guy that bought the equipment reported it as a business transaction. The funds were frozen. The guy who sold the equipment never got the money, and the guy who bought the equipment got the equipment for free because Venmo froze the assets. So that was a little scam that was happening, I think, in New York, and I think it made its way to Los Angeles. So if you do sell stuff, never use Venmo, cash, or PayPal. Same thing with business transactions, cash or PayPal. And if you trust the client, use check. You don't want the check to bounce. That's why I'm a little bit wary of checks. So yeah, I mean, if the client, for the most part, if the client pays you cash, a cash deposit, then I would trust them to pay check if need be when the project is finished. Привет, bro. Привет из России. Hello, Ila. Ila, what's up, dude? We have a Russian here. I just read his Russian message. He said, hey, bro, hi from Russia. That's awesome. Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, so make sure, guys, that you stay away from Venmo unless it's for friends and family. Do you like the Ronin better than the Jew and Crane? Again, guys, I'm releasing that on my comparison video. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I do want to shoot more with the Ronin-S. I really do. I want to give it I want to give it a fair review. So, yeah. Мы виделись на NAB show. Oh yeah, I remember. That's awesome. He says the guy from Russia is saying that we saw each other at NAB. That's awesome. On the Jew and Tech stand. Awesome, dude. I remember you. Yeah, guys. So let me know if you have any more last minute questions. I'm actually going apartment shopping later today. I looked at some really cool places, some big enough places where I can build my own studio, because the place where I live in right now is very small. It's very cramped. So I'm excited. I'm very, very excited to actually have a YouTube studio. So stay tuned for that, guys. I think that's going to be pretty damn exciting. And if you guys are interested, I can vlog the whole moving process. Believe it or not, besides my equipment, I really don't have much. I just have my desk, my TV, and my bed. That's about it. All this other stuff I'm throwing out because it's old. Yeah. And it's just too big to move. It's not worth it. Thanks for your answers. No worries. Love from India, man. Thanks for all the useful info. Thank you so much for watching, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, guys, honestly, I'm not bashing the Ronin-S, all right? So if you're disliking the video thinking I'm bashing the Ronin-S, I'm not. It's a solid gimbal, okay? I just fear that DJI was pretty late into the game, and so they don't really know. They don't have much to go off of when it comes down to research and development. They were focusing on releasing their drones, I understand, but I mean, it's a solid gimbal. But when you're comparing it to a company like Tech, who's been doing gimbals, single-handed gimbals for years, they lock down the algorithm. Okay, I've never had any instability issues with the Crane 2, but with the Ronin-S, there's definitely some issues there. Again, wait for my full comparison video. I released my first impressions video tomorrow, and that should answer a lot of your questions if you're thinking about buying a gimbal right now. Okay, so tomorrow's video is not a review. It's just my experience with my first professional shoot with the Ronin-S. That's what it is. And go to my IG, momentum_productions, if you want to see some teaser footage of the Ronin-S. And yeah, you'll get kind of a better picture. But if you're wanting to buy either gimbal right now, like literally right now, be patient, my friend. In about 16 hours, I will be releasing the first impressions video. All right, 16 hours. You guys can wait 16 hours. Just hold your credit card in your little vault or whatever, or lock up your wallet in a vault, or give it to a friend, and make sure you don't spend any money for the next 16 hours until I release my first impressions video. And then if you guys can wait a couple weeks, I will release my full comparison video between the Ronin-S and the Crane 2. And that's honestly what I suggest you do. But if you need a gimbal now, wait for tomorrow's first impression video. And we'll talk about the Ronin-S and my overall thoughts on it. And I'm going to leave the Crane 2 out of the mix for that video because I want to solely base everything off of the Ronin-S. I don't want to compare it to any other gimbal. I just want to talk about my experiences with it. The comparison video will be the nitty and gritty stuff, the good, bad, and the ugly from both gimbals, and which one I overall would rather use. All right. So yeah, that's where we're at with that type of stuff. What application do you edit your videos on? Final Cut Pro 10. That's definitely something I use a lot. So yeah, I use Final Cut. Guys, we just broke 5 million views on the channel. Yeah, we broke 5 million views. I just looked at the stats. We are at 5,002,000 some views, it looks like. That's awesome, guys. Awesome, awesome. 5,015,916 views. That's great. That's a good milestone. 5 million, man. We did it. We did it. Let's keep it up, you guys. Let's keep it up. All right. All right, guys. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. I hope I answered a lot of your questions regarding the DJI Ronin-S. Tomorrow, I am releasing my first impressions video for it. Ila, thank you so much for your super chat, brother. Spasiba. Skoro widzimся. And I really appreciate you guys watching. And stay tuned for my first impressions video. I think that you guys will learn a lot from it. And yeah, just stay tuned. All right, guys, I love you all. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Share, like the channel. Make sure